Hey there! Thanks for stopping by my first video. As there's a beginning to everything, I'll explain what I aim to do with this video. And in the bigger picture with this channel. My goal will be to teach you guys and myself how to play Zelda better. Of course, I'm not the best Zelda ever, but I'll gladly take any advice you guys have to give me. Anyway, this segment is starting to get long, so without further ado, let's get into it. Down throwing your enemy near a platform at low percent will send them flying into a tech chase situation. From here they'll have to pick one of three choices, which are misteching, teching, or tech rolling. When teching, your opponent will have a slight delay before he can shield, which can be punished with an up air. Zelda's up air has a very generous hitbox, thus allowing you to often cover two options at a time when positioned correctly. The following clips cover a roll in and attack, a roll out and attack, and vice versa. If your enemy doesn't tech, however, you'll want to punish them instantly. Also, a short hop fast falling up air can be comboed to itself for an optimal punish. The up throw will also send into a tech chase situation on the upper platform. This will work between 15 and 25% and will be punishable like before. Your opponent can counter this strategy by DIing out at very low percent or by double jumping at early mid percent. Zelda has a very powerful and cool looking cheese, but it only works if your opponent falls asleep for half a second. I'll show you how to do it step by step. First, up throw your opponent and instantly double jump. Then input a down air that needs to come out at the highest point of your jump, fast fall at the end of your down air, and finish off with an up B. Here's the combo without interruption to finish off this segment. Now, using the knowledge we acquired during the previous section, we'll see that using an up air is not the only way to punish a down throw. Let's take a second to review Zelda's down air again. Like two of her other aerials, Zelda's down air has two hitboxes. The first hitbox deals a lot of damage and stuns your opponent for a couple of frames. And the second hitbox deals very little damage and exposes you to a potential counterattack. Now let's look at a few things you'll need to understand in order to punish with a down air. Don't be hasty with your inputs, otherwise you'll hit the late hitbox. If you're too slow, your opponent will have time to shield. If your timing is right, you'll hit the sweet spot for good damage and potential follow-up. Some of these follow-ups will depend on whether or not you fast fall after your down air. Lastly, your directional input will influence where you land, thus creating some new follow-ups. Now you may be wondering what are those follow-ups, and rightfully so let's get into it. The first follow-up, as seen before, is an up B. If you hit your opponent at the edge of a platform, you'll be able to jab and send them into another tech chase. This also works if you punish a mistech and you wait for your opponent to roll. You can punish this second tech chase in lots of different ways, and I'm sure you'll have fun finding some of them. Lastly, hitting a sour spot down air on a mistech will allow you to extend your combo. Let's move on to one of Zelda's strongest advantage states, which is ledgetrapping. For those who don't know, we call ledgetrapping this situation right here, where your opponent is forced to choose an option at the ledge. These set options are jumping, attacking, waiting, getting up, and rolling. Now let's look at the main tool you'll use to cover these options. If you hadn't guessed already, we'll talk about Zelda's iconic Phantom. The Phantom has 6 different charge phases, which can be used to cover Zelda, attack, force an option from your opponent, or in this case, Ledgetrap. Of course, this tool is very versatile and we'll talk about it in a later video. For now, we'll just cover the ledge trapping. In general, you want to place the knight so that it finishes dashing at the end of the ledge. You should also try to finish your knight as soon as your opponent drops the ledge. With this technique, you'll be able to punish every single option of your enemy if you react to it, or if you know their timing. During this time, you can also have fun baiting some of the options. Some of these bait can give you some insane punishes. Try to mix up as much as possible to avoid this. Also be careful about rushing things, because if your opponent times their options well, they'll be invulnerable. Getting hit by the Phantom while waiting will be almost guaranteed in every game, as it's one of Zelda's biggest matchup checks. Like every other options, normal get-ups can be read or reacted to. A panic roll is one of the easiest things to punish with your forward smash. It's also good to note that Zelda's forward smash has the potential to punish get-up attacks, normal get-ups and jumps. The first is because you recoil back while charging, and the second is because of the sheer size of the hitbox. Again, reminding that baiting is an essential part to send your opponent back into a ledge trap. Another option that's guaranteed to take your enemy by surprise is ledge trumping. Your down tilt combos with your Phantom too. Okay, this is very situational, but if you condition your enemy to shield, you can shield break them. Here's another setup, but it requires knowledge about TP cancelling. I recommend you watch this guide in order to learn it. Finally, you can 2-frame with your Phantom, but it's not something you're gonna do very often. But it exists. Now, to mention one of the crucial things about Zelda is playing along with your knight. Think of it like this. When your knight is in play, you're playing a 2v1 situation. This is especially strong in ledge trapping, since your knight has both an aerial and a grounded hitbox. If you combine these hitboxes with some of Zelda's other moves as we've seen before, it becomes very hard to regain the stage. Let's take a look at a few examples to illustrate my point before we move on. The Phantom covers the ground first, so you might want to throw an aerial hitbox in order to catch a jump or to send your opponent back into your Phantom. Here the Phantom covers a potential jump while Zelda follows up for a roll. Even if you fail to cover one option, you can react to the other. Finally, some hitboxes last for a while, so you can just trap your enemy into your Phantom. Alright, let's move on to the next section. Okay, we're reaching the end of our journey here, and now to finalize this video we're gonna cover edgeguarding. Just like before, if you don't know what edgeguarding means, it's this situation here. So you'll basically want to keep your enemy away from the stage and hopefully take a stock. To be sure that we are all on the same page, your enemy will always have one jump available and one air dodge available. After they use that, they'll be out of resources. Finally, I think it's important to categorize recoveries. I personally use 3 categories, which are Ledgetrap, good recoveries, and bad recoveries. Of course, those are my categories. I strongly advise you to come up with your own categories, since it helps with memorizing how to punish them. Okay, now that the general stuff is out of the question, let's look at the tools Zelda has at her disposition. Let's start with the side B, one of my favorite tools. As you can see, I drew a shape of roughly where the side B can go, just to give you an idea of how much range you have. Now, you'll mainly use this tool against people that have a very predictable recovery, like Bowser in this case, or mainly to bait a jump or an air dodge to follow up. The next tool is your down air, which is my favorite, not only because it's powerful, but also because you can cheese stocks with the sour spot, especially against opponents with bad recoveries. Now you're probably thinking why that is? It's simply because your down air is broken. The sour spot sends down and it lasts for ages, so make sure to use it against any opponent that has trouble coming back. Also, the strong hit obliterates any recoveries that lack a hitbox on the way up. Up next is your neutral B, and since we haven't covered it yet, let's look at it real quick. Now, what makes this a very good tool in edgeguarding is the 9 intangible frames you have, as well as the very long duration of the hitbox. Those intangible frames are especially useful against, you guessed it, hitboxes. With a bit of practice, enemies like Bowser here will never be able to regain the stage. And the long hitbox is especially useful against Zelda'S. Moving on to your neutral air, it's very useful against Zelda'S again because it's very long, or against recoveries without side hitboxes. Again, with some practice, some enemies may not be able to come back. Speaking of recoveries without hitboxes on the side, or hitboxes at all, you can exploit them with your fair or your back air. Please remember that there is a high risk-reward factor to your fair or your back air, since hitting the sweet spot consistently is quite difficult. Now let's move on to the Phantom. There are mostly two ways of using him. The first way is setting him up at the ledge and sending your opponent inside of him. And the second way is quite uncommon, but it's very good against low recoveries or to catch a jump, and that is just going off stage with him. Now the last tool I want to cover is your up B. I'm only showing this to you because it exists. It's very impractical and very unsafe, but it's good to flex on your opponent sometimes. It has its utility in very desperate situations as it surprises your opponent, but it's not safe. Alright, we've reached the end of the video. If you're still here after 11 minutes of Zelda theories and stuff, I'm really grateful, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Bye!